You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The first lesson that I think we can all learn is getting quality players over a quantity of players. I'll put it in layman's terms. Get good players, not just a bunch of players. Sound fair enough? It's probably better to get 2 good players instead of 4 mediocre players. How about that? Hopefully you can understand what I am saying, all right? If not, feel free to ask your question in the comment section below and I will answer it for you. Every team, this is new from the NCAA heading into next season, 2025-26, is going to have 15 scholarship spots available for men's basketball. But I'm going to let you in on a little secret. You don't have to use all of them. You don't. It's that simple. In fact, the rule right now is 13 scholarship players. I don't think that Syracuse basketball is using all 13. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but last I checked, it was 12. And Peter Mastorovich was the 12th and final player that Syracuse gave a scholarship for this season. Having said that, the focus this offseason and in the portal needs to be getting quality players instead of a collection or a quantity of players. And even though that Syracuse basketball is probably going to have more money to spend, that's a good thing, right? In fact, they're playing in that Vegas NIL era tournament next year. That gives Syracuse an additional $1 million in NIL, just like every other team that's going to participate in it. Even though that they're probably going to increase their budget, you got to expect that there's going to be other schools around the country that are doing the exact same thing for this upcoming year. So, look, the elite big-time programs, they can do both. They can get a high quantity of elite players because they simply have bigger pockets, deeper pockets. But for Syracuse, they really can't do both. At least for right now, and hopefully maybe they can prove me wrong and get 5 transfers in the top 50 and spend a boatload of NIL money for it. But I'll believe it when I see it. You got to go after quality over quantity. Why is that the case? Well, let's think about the best transfer over the previous 2 years. It's J.J. Starling, and it's not even close. J.J. Starling was ranked the 5th overall rated transfer per 24/7 Sports. Has he necessarily provided the best return on investment, considering he was the 5th rated transfer available? I'm not entirely sure, but he has certainly been the best of the 8 that Syracuse basketball has gotten over the previous 2 years. And I've been critical of him. Sure. In fact, I was very critical of him in the last post-game show that I did after SMU. Why is he taking 10 3-pointers in a game? I don't know. The guy shoots less than 27% from the 3-point line. Makes no sense to me. But he's been better than Chance Westry, Naheem McLeod, and Kyle Cuffe combined. It's like not even close. His impact is better than all 3 of those players combined. And I think it would have been better, obviously, in hindsight, had Syracuse basketball spent the resources on maybe one player instead of getting a whole combination of Chance Westry, Kyle Cuffe, and Naheem McLeod. Now, it's a little bit difficult with Chance Westry because it's unfortunate what happened to him. It's mainly due to injury. He was looking really good ahead of the 2023-24 season. Then he got hurt, and since being hurt, we've seen him on the floor for just a few minutes, which was this past season, and people think he's a ghost. He was ranked 76th, by the way, in the transfer portal. So that's a high-rated portal player that they got in Chance Westry. It just didn't work out because he got hurt. But Naheem McLeod was at 323, and Kyle Cuffe was at 342 overall per 24/7 Sports. I think for this offseason, if you're Syracuse basketball, you got to avoid those types of transfers. Unless you are so sure that this player can really be a diamond in the rough, you already have limited resources. Save those resources to maybe throw in that extra amount of money that you need to go get a better player. That's why I'm saying it's better to get a quality player than Kyle Cuffe and Naheem McLeod. I'd rather a mediocre player over those two. Because what's the return on investment on them? Not much. Not much at all. 2024, I'll put Eddie Lampkin in a separate category because Syracuse needed a starting center. They got a starting center. And I will talk about later on in the podcast a strategy for centers in the portal this upcoming season because I have an interesting take for you all that I would love to get your feedback on. So we'll save that for later in the podcast. But think of the money that Syracuse spent on getting these three guys. Jaquan Carlos, Jyare Davis, and Lucas Taylor. And think about where they were ranked in the transfer portal. Rankings aren't everything, but they do tell a pretty good story about how a player is going to typically perform. And Jyare Davis was ranked 130. Lucas Taylor was at 199. And Jaquan Carlos was at 213. What's the return on investment that you are getting on those players? Not much, right? I think Syracuse basketball would have been much better off. Instead of paying all three of them, you pool that money together and you go get one guy. They probably would have been a lot better. Overall, Syracuse basketball, in my opinion, is much better off chasing quality over a quantity of players. And what does that mean going forward? I'll tell you what it means. It means you're going to have a shortened bench. You're not going to be able to roll 8, 9 deep. But that's okay. I can live with that because remember 2024? Remember that when Syracuse basketball won 20 games, right? Probably the only reason why Adrian Autry has a job is because they won 20 games that first season with him. How many players were actually in the rotation? By the end of the year, it was like 6. Let me try to remember. It was Judah Mintz. It was J.J. Starling. It was Quadir Copeland, Malik Brown, Chris Bell, and Justin Taylor. That was it. And yet they won 20 games. Compared to this season where there's a lot of players that have played for Syracuse basketball. They have a quote-unquote deeper bench. But has it translated to wins? Absolutely not. Even if Donnie Freeman was healthy the whole year, and even if J.J. Starling is the whole year, they would not have matched 20 wins from a year ago. There's just no chance that would have happened. It is better, instead of going after lower-rated players in the portal, to save those resources and try to get one better player. I'd love to hear your take on this in the comment section below, whether you agree or disagree. Feel free to let me know in the comment section below.